Number 10. Does consciousness linger? Imagine lying in a hospital bed, doctors declaring you clinically dead, yet somewhere deep inside your brain, a flicker of awareness might still be active. Chilling. Right? Science has confirmed something both fascinating and disturbing. When the heart stops beating, the brain doesn't instantly shut off. Instead, researchers have measured a surge of brain activity seconds, sometimes even minutes, after declared death. It's as if the brain fires one last electrical storm, lighting up neural circuits before collapsing into silence. Here's where it gets strange. Some people revived after cardiac arrest report eerily similar experiences, floating above their body, hearing conversations in the room, even recalling the exact time a doctor called the time of death. It's not just cultural storytelling. There are recorded cases where the patient later described real verifiable details they couldn't have known if they were gone. Psychologists debate whether this is a dying brain's hallucination or evidence of lingering consciousness. Is it the mind's final movie reel, stitched together by memory? Or are we catching a glimpse of something beyond biology? One theory suggests that the brain releases DMT, an intensely hallucinogenic compound, when oxygen supply drops. That could explain why so many near-death experiences share visual tunnels, blinding light, or encounters with deceased loved ones. But here's the paradox. If the brain is truly shutting down, how does it generate such vivid and structured experiences? The question remains unanswered. Does consciousness survive the moment of death, even briefly? Or are we simply watching neurons firing their last fireworks? Number 9. Why do we fear the unknown more than death itself? Picture this: you're walking alone at night. A sudden rustle in the bushes freezes your steps. You don't know what it is, but your heart races, as if it's already death itself, waiting in the dark. Curiously, humans often fear the uncertainty of what death means more than the fact of dying itself. Surveys show that many people don't rank being dead as their biggest fear. It's the mystery of what happens afterward that haunts us. Psychologists link this to existential uncertainty. The human brain is wired to predict, plan, and categorize. But death is the ultimate unresolvable problem. No one can fully map it. No science can give you a definitive answer. For some, that uncertainty sparks curiosity. For others, it's pure terror. Religious traditions try to fill the gap: heaven, reincarnation, enlightenment, cosmic recycling. But even believers often wrestle with doubts at night. On the flip side, some philosophers like Epicurus argued we shouldn't fear death at all. When we exist, death is not. And when death exists, we are not. Rational maybe, but tell that to your racing pulse in a dark alley. Here's the kicker. Experiments show people confronted with reminders of death, like passing a graveyard, unconsciously shift their behavior. They may cling harder to their culture beliefs or even consume more to distract themselves. It's called terror management theory. Essentially, the unknown of death nudges us into strange, often irrational choices just to feel a sense of control. So maybe our real fear isn't death, it's that we'll never know if the story continues. Number 8. Do we know the exact moment death happens? Think about this. A doctor announces the time of death, writing a precise minute on a chart. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Death isn't a sharp cliff, it's a slope. Traditionally, people thought death was when the heart stopped beating. No pulse, no life. But then CPR and defibrillators came along, reviving people who had technically died. So, was their death real, or just a pause button? Today, doctors often define death by brain death, meaning the irreversible loss of brain function. Yet even this isn't clear-cut. Tiny reflexes may still spark after a declaration. Cells in the body can keep working for hours, even days. Skin might produce new cells. Muscles sometimes twitch. Here's a creepy example. In 2017, Canadian doctors reported something shocking. After life support was withdrawn from 4 patients, one of them showed detectable brain activity for more than 10 minutes after flatlining. That means their brain kept firing in silence after doctors had already signed the paperwork. If death is supposed to be final, how do we explain this twilight zone? Is the moment of death actually unknowable? More of a fading transition than a single second? Ancient cultures recognized this blur too. Some traditions waited days before burial to ensure no one was prematurely declared dead. That's where legends of people waking in coffins come from. Horrifying, yes, but also a reminder of how tricky it is to pinpoint the exact moment someone crosses the line. So when a doctor gives you the official time, it might just be a convenient fiction. In reality, death doesn't care about our clocks. Number 7. Why do we see light at the end of the tunnel? Close your eyes and imagine falling unconscious. Suddenly, a glowing tunnel opens before you, pulling you toward a dazzling light. Millions have reported this near-death vision, but no one fully understands why. Scientists have theories. One idea is that as the brain shuts down, oxygen drops, and the visual cortex, the part of your brain that processes sight, goes haywire. Imagine a camera lens glitching, producing a tunnel effect that feels intensely real. Another theory points to peripheral vision, fading first, leaving only a narrowing, bright center. Voila, the tunnel of light. But what makes this vision so universal, even across cultures and religions? A Hindu in India, a Christian in the US, and an atheist in Sweden may all report nearly identical tunnel experiences. That consistency is hard to brush off as coincidence. Some argue the tunnel is psychological, the mind's metaphorical pathway between life and death. Others believe it's evidence of something beyond biology, an actual crossing a spiritual highway to the next world. Of course, skeptics note that many people also experience floating sensations, reunions with loved ones, or overwhelming peace. Could these be evolutionary tricks, a final comfort mechanism designed to soothe our transition into nothingness? Or is the light exactly what it seems, a gateway? The unsettling part, we may not know until we walk that tunnel ourselves. Number 6. Can the dead hear the living? Imagine sitting at a funeral, whispering a secret into the ear of someone lying peacefully in their coffin. Most people assume those words vanish into the void. But what if they don't? Recent studies suggest that hearing might be the last sense to fade at the edge of death. In 2020, Canadian researchers monitored brainwaves of hospice patients in their final hours. They discovered that even when patients appeared completely unresponsive, their brains still showed activity when familiar voices or sounds played. In other words, a dying person may still process the voices of loved ones right up until their final breath. That finding raises goosebumps. How many heartfelt goodbyes, whispered confessions, or even casual remarks might have been heard by someone presumed unconscious? Families often talk to loved ones on life support, and now science suggests it's not in vain. But here's the uncanny twist. Some people revived after cardiac arrest claim they did hear everything around them. Imagine being trapped, unable to move or respond, but still aware of doctors declaring you dead. That's not just eerie, it's terrifying. Psychologists wonder if these reports come from fragments of memory stitched together afterward. Yet the brain scans suggest otherwise. Even in the borderland of death, the auditory system can remain alive. So next time someone says their final words at a bedside, maybe they're not just speaking into silence. Maybe the dead are listening longer than we think. Number 5. Why do corpses sometimes move? You've seen it in horror movies. A body twitches in the morgue, a finger jerks, maybe even an eye flickers open. Creepy fiction, right? Not entirely. After-death muscles don't instantly relax into stillness. Instead, chemical processes continue as cells use up their last bits of energy. This can trigger spasms, jerks, or even full limb movements. For example, in some recorded cases, newly deceased bodies have raised an arm, sat slightly upright, or shifted their head hours after death. To someone watching, it looks like the dead are coming back. It gets stranger. During decomposition, gases build up inside the body. This pressure can make a corpse release sounds, moans, groans, even what sounds like a sigh. Imagine being a medieval gravedigger, hearing a body speak as you shovel dirt. No wonder tales of vampires and the undead spread so easily. But even modern medicine isn't immune to the uncanny. Nurses and morgue workers often report after-death reflexes. A hand grabbing suddenly, toes curling, eyes twitching. There's nothing supernatural here. It's just chemistry and nerves firing. But that knowledge doesn't make it less disturbing when you see it. Here's the unnerving question. If the body is still capable of motion and sound after death, where exactly do we draw the line between life and final silence? Number 4. Why do some cultures fear ghosts more than death? In some places, death is accepted as a natural step. In others, the real terror isn't dying, it's what happens after, when the spirit lingers. Across Asia, Latin America, and parts of Europe, ghost traditions are deeply tied to how people view death. In Japan, restless spirits called yurei are believed to haunt the living if proper funeral rites aren't performed. In Mexico, Dia de los Muertos transforms fear into celebration, yet the belief that the dead return to visit is taken very seriously. In rural parts of Eastern Europe, people once placed heavy stones or even iron stakes through corpses to keep them from rising. Psychologists think ghost beliefs arise from something called agency detection. Our brains are hardwired to sense hidden presences, a rustle in the dark, a shadow in the corner, even when there's nothing there. It's evolutionary paranoia, better to mistake the wind for a predator than miss a real threat. Death amplifies this instinct because when someone we love is gone, our minds sometimes still feel them nearby. Grief hallucinations are surprisingly common. Widows report hearing their spouse's voice. Parents feel the weight of a child on the bed. Neurologically, it makes sense. Memory circuits overlap with sensory ones. But culturally, these moments become proof of ghosts. Here's the paradox. Some cultures fear death because it ends life. Others fear it because life might not end at all. Number 3. Why do some bodies refuse to decay? Imagine walking into a crypt expecting dust and bones, only to find a centuries-old corpse with skin intact and a face that looks eerily alive. No mummification, no embalming, just preserved. These so-called incorruptible bodies baffle scientists and feed countless legends. In Catholic tradition, some saints' bodies remain lifelike decades after death. Considered a sign of divine favor, pilgrims travel miles to see them, believing holiness preserves the flesh. Science, however, points to unusual environmental factors. Dry air, mineral-rich soil, or a sealed coffin can slow decomposition drastically. In some cases, adipocere known as corpse wax forms, sealing the body in a soap-like layer that halts decay. Still, even with these explanations, not every case fits neatly. Some corpses remain untouched by time, despite conditions that should rot them quickly. Then there are self-mummified monks in Japan who prepared for death by eating special diets that made their bodies resistant to decay. It's discipline taken beyond the grave, leaving behind preserved remains that look like statues. The unsettling question is this: are these bodies truly miracles? Scientific anomalies, or something we simply don't yet understand? Either way, standing in front of one is like staring at death, refusing to finish its job. Number 2. Do we have a soul or just neurons? Here's a thought experiment. If someone copied your brain cell by cell, neuron, by neuron, down to the last spark of electricity, would that copy be you? Or would it just be a convincing puppet with no inner life? This is where death gets tricky. Across cultures, humans have leaned on the idea of a soul, something immaterial that survives after the body dies. Ancient Egyptians preserved organs to help the soul navigate the afterlife. Plato believed the soul was eternal, simply moving from body to body. Today, billions of people still hold similar beliefs, but neuroscience doesn't find souls under a microscope. Instead, it finds 86 billion neurons firing in patterns that create memory, personality, and identity. If those signals stop, so does you. At least that's the materialist argument. Here's the catch: consciousness is still a mystery. Despite decades of study, scientists can't explain how raw neurons create subjective experience. Your sense of self, your awareness, your private inner world. This is the infamous hard problem of consciousness. If science can't explain life, how confidently can it explain death? Some researchers toy with quantum theories of consciousness, suggesting the mind might be tied to the fabric of the universe itself. Others say that's wishful thinking, dressed in lab coats. Still, the question lingers: if consciousness is more than just chemistry, maybe something really does survive. So when you die, are you extinguished like a candle or released like smoke? No one has the answer. Number 1. Why do we die at all? Here's the strangest death question of all. Why does life have to end? Biologically, some creatures don't seem to get the memo. Take the immortal jellyfish Turritopsis dohrnii. When injured or stressed, it reverts its cells to an earlier state and essentially starts over. Certain lobsters show negligible signs of aging, their bodies repairing DNA damage almost endlessly. In theory, some life forms might go on forever, barring accidents. So why not? Us evolutionary biologists suggest death isn't a flaw, but a feature. By clearing the way for new generations, death speeds up adaptation. Old genes make room for new ones. Without death, Earth might be packed with ancient organisms, hogging all the resources, leaving no space for fresh life. But the human mind doesn't accept that trade so easily. Philosophers from the Stoics to Nietzsche wrestled with the question: if immortality were possible, would it be paradise or a curse? Imagine outliving everyone you love, watching civilizations rise and fall, drifting endlessly without closure. Perhaps the strangest mystery of death is that it may not be inevitable in theory, but it is in practice. For now, our bodies unravel, cells falter, and time wins. The question isn't just why we die, it's why we must. That's it for today. I'll be doing similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.